high-end, P2 rolls and all of that. So I first did his collection about 3 years ago, and there's only a couple cars that I've come back in and touched up, and they were the really rough ones. So in a humidity-controlled setting, 70-some degrees and whatever relative humidity, they've maintained their in that building and on tours with a regular just wash for the last 3 years. So the products do work.
And how do you apply this up?
So the ceramic, this ceramic, it comes with a, some of them have a booster, which is basically an extra paint cleaning step. If I've gone to all this work, I usually just cut that out of the picture. If you have a nice shiny car already, like a clear coat that, you don't have to worry with all that, you can use the boosters to...
No, I mean, do you, like...
Yeah, it's just like, it's just like wax, yeah. Like this one, you just have foam applicator pad, and you work in a small section, pretty small section at a time, because it's going to get harder than wax. And you don't want to get too ahead of yourself, and you don't want to do it in a hot condition, or you'll be like, oh, that didn't look the way I wanted it to. And then trying to reverse it's going to be a bit of work. So some are more user-friendly in that respect than others. This one, I would say, is not as user-friendly in that respect. It takes a little more skill, a little more research and teaching. But some of the systems out there, like the Blackfire and some of that, I think Chemical Guys has one that's pretty good. They're all just like a wax, and they have a couple different steps, and they'll there's usually directions that'll walk you through those steps.
Well, I'm just curious about one thing. I see it. Oh, that's a blend line, or is that something that could be?
Okay. So this is a blend line, yes, and some of it's a bit of a burn through too, like right there. So the thing with single stage paint is there used to be the old mindset of, well, we can polish and burn that in, or we can respray that with solvent and burn that back in. Well, yes, that's true, but it won't stay there. So the best thing you can do is to polish it the best you can and keep it sealed. And if you continually maintain it that way, the less it will show. I mean, black's the most, is the scariest. With that said, I just had somebody in the club call me about, he's painting only half of his fall, half of his shadow. And he was, I don't think he quite knew what he was getting into. And I told him, I said, well, a lot of this is common sense. I said, example number one is, I know a billionaire that, fully restored his P2. They used a great single stage paint. I said, but it come back and they took the blend right down the middle of the thing. And it's black. So even though it's brand new and shiny and everything, a blend line like that was front and center. Whereas, so if you do paint a car and you're overseeing your paint job a little bit, important things to know is have them take it all the way down into the fender. Have them take it all the way down into the small of the running board, into the pillar, into under the trim line. Don't do just half the hood. I mean, a lot of this is common sense, and a lot of paint shops understand that. But a lot of people also go in saying, well, I'm only going to spend this much money. So the owner of the paint shop says, well, you're only going to go to this level of prep. And that's the level of paint job that you're going to get. Because the paint job's all in the prep, not spraying the color. Or even block stamping for that matter. So, things to keep in mind if you do have a car painted, whether it's base coat, clear coat, whether it's an old blend, just don't let them come down the side of the fender or the door, because it won't go away. And the reason is you can hide it for a while, but since it's always breathing, it's always going to come back.
So polishing it would just temporarily.
It would temporarily keep it there. Yeah, only temporary. And that comes from an old school guy who sprayed lacquer and has had people go, oh, you shoot it with some more solvent. He's like, no, that's a waste of solvent. So yeah, that's a good point, Tony. Burn through and thin spots. Once again, you can do things like this by hand, and as long as you kind of keep them, I'll say, glossy, for lack of a better term, so that they're not feeling dry, and then you seal it with your wax or your coating. That'll stay there. So any kind of further damage as far as delamination and paint falling off, it shouldn't bother it. So a lot of the pinstripes, in order to, I use one-shot enamel just because I can get the versatility in colors and mix them to my artistic will, so to speak. To get the old stripe off, though, you have to polish the snot out of it. So don't try taking a bunch of chemicals to get the stripe off. You're going to waste your time. Or you're going to, threaten to damage the old paint that's there. So you usually have to polish it off, and it takes a lot of work. So my best recommendation for people who have issues like this is just, finish touching in where you are bald with it. For the cars that I've striped that didn't have a stripe, that were newer restorations, I use, since Rolls-Royce had a specific size, and it's kind of a funky size. It's in between like 3/16 and something. And so, or it was just hand done on the line, and there is no size, depending on the custom level of your vehicle. So, what Simon and I do back in Kansas City for his restorations, we use this company for pinstripe tape, and it's very user-friendly, even though I know how to stripe by hand. It's user-friendly in you lay it down, and you have your void here for your stripe. There's a this is going to be so sticky, I'm not going to be able to show you well. Anyway, it's got the clear film on the front that you pull back after you lay it on the car where you want it, and it'll leave those two brown lines there as a guide for you, and then you can stripe in between. Now, if your paint's too runny, I don't care how tight you have this tape against there, it's going to bleed right through. So it's better to have a little bit of thicker consistency to your pinstripe tape if you decide to use something like this and not do it just flat hand. The old cane work on these cars, Ralph has educated me in they would take two people on the line and do it by hand. So one guy would come by hand this way, and the other guy would meet him back the other way. So all those cane work Sedankas and stuff you see, those are all done by hand with a special raised paint. And I've talked to people in the UK, I don't know that you can get that particular raised paint anymore. There's ways you can mimic it, but it's not quite the same. They still have a bit of a, it's not as raised, I would say.
Is it a thicker paint?
Yeah, so a little paint history, which for you guys with Jaguars and stuff too will help a lot. So paint coats these days are getting harder and harder to cross over. And Rolls-Royce, Bentley, Jaguar, a lot of the UK cars were very, very well documented with their paint coats. And I could still pull most of them up for you today. And we'd get an accurate color chip. Problem is, some of the Jaguars and some of the Bentleys, when the war happened, there were two big paint companies overseas that made all the tints. And one of those companies got bombed. So if you have a very early 50s Jaguar, a Battleship Gray, for example, that code, or that particular color chip, it doesn't exist anymore. It historically doesn't exist anymore because it went away in the bombing. And so therefore, then you begin, so the other paint company tried to salvage through the remains of what they could and the records they had, took that information and brought it over. So even back in the war, your paint codes weren't crossing over. So if you get into that frustration with a new paint job, just bear with it, because it was like that back in the day too. Another example is British Racing Green. There really is no formula for British Racing Green, because what they did is they took all the leftover black and green from all the military vehicles, they mixed them all together, and they painted the trains with them. And that's how they protected the trains. Some guy, in Hitler's group come along and said, well, I want to paint my car over here, British Racing, want to paint it that green. I want it that green, And so they matched it, and then they basically made a code for it, and from there, a million different versions of British Racing Green came into the picture. So when you get frustrated with paint codes and color matching and all that, it's just as frustrating for me, just so you know. But a lot of it is very history-based. A lot of the old reds had a lot of oxide in them, a lot of lead in the old yellows, things like that.
So I have a question. What about like the old paint chips that existed from the 40s and 50s? I have like numerous paint chips for Jaguar and things like that. Would those be, like you mentioned Battleship Gray, so we have paint chips in Battleship Gray from the 1940s. Would that be something that could be used to make?
You can use it, because that's how we painted one of the particular Jaguars that went Battleship Gray here not too long ago. You can use it. Here's going to be your frustration and your wild goose chase. Is you now have to take, with today's technology and most people's knowledge at this point, you would have to take that paint chip. You would have to take their special camera, take a picture of that, and then color match to that. And this is part of the frustration Sherry had. So as you get into different paint brands, the way they keep from being a monopoly as far as business goes is their tints run on different color spectrums. So Glycerit, Sikkens, and Lessenol has more yellow to their tints. PPG runs more blue. DuPont runs more green. Trying to match DuPont yellow sometimes is a nightmare. And it has to do with the chemicals that are in them, the area of the country that they're allowed to have those chemicals in because of the EPA. So if you can only get one certain brand of paint, like let's say PPG, and you want a specific blue and it comes back to purple, well, just know that that color swatch you took in, even though you took a camera shot, that might be the difference, is their color tints on the mixing bay. Because it's all measured out in grams and very specific decimal situations now compared to the old days. But, you kind of have to know what color spectrum, or your painter, it's really your painter's job, has to know what color spectrum you're running in as far as color match. So,
So double question. So older cars, pre-World War II, if it does need a paint job, A, what is the recommended technology to paint with now? Old stuff, new stuff, what's allowed? And then B, if you have these old color specs, are there any reference sites where you can go and find out what it would be approximate to today?
There's a few reference sites out there. I will tell you though that you can take those reference sites and, you know, depending on how good your paint shop is, they might look at you and go, oh, I don't understand this. You know, I mean, which is where I'm trying to get to a point, at least on my website, where I can help guide people in that respect a little more. I'm hoping to have that kind of going by the end of the year. So yes, there are a few sites out there, and I'm drawing a blank on the main one I use.
The good thing about these cars is most of the time we have the original
Right.
spec.
Right,
The
and
records are so good.
just like he was saying with the Battleship Gray, yeah, I had color chips for that all day long, but you know, we had to go through 3 different, let's put it this way, the guy I know, he actually has a very good eye for color, and no offense to any of the men in the room, but a lot of men run colorblind in red and green, so that was a new challenge for me with him, but anyway, yes, there are some resources out there. Whether they're crossover with your paint shop or you know, it just depends. The best thing I've found as on an artist level these days, and after, you know, painting a lot of these older cars, is we took a color shot and put it into our computer system software. And we just had the education of knowing, okay, we're working with Sickens paint, so things are either going to run a little more white, which makes things look cleaner, or maybe, you know, a little more yellow or something. So in our formula, when we mixed and did our spray outs, we, as human beings, made adjustments to the computer with that. Some people are great at that and can nail it. Some people can't. And there's a lot of people that can't. You know, they get really, really close. Here's the next thing with that. Under these lights here, don't do it. Under LED lights, even if they're daylight ones, better. What you really need to do is take the outside. For a good reason is Ralph's got a shadow that's yellow, and it was painted twice back in the day. It's very good repair. But one